We arrived, at a time when, French touch music, the first chapter, 1996, 2003, was a pretty big, because it was the basis of what people are calling French touch. What also excites me and makes me happy after all those years, when I'm listening, to Charlie XCX or to Kate Ranada, they often speak about Justice, DJ Mehdi, Sebastian.
I love that, French artists are not afraid to define their own genre and push boundaries the way they did back in the days. It was so innovative and it was so different.
The heritage and the inspiration shows that this electronic movement that was born in France in the 90s is still, relevant, 30 years later. And this style inspired, the biggest pop artists all around the world.
Hello, we're Justice, with Mix with the Masters.
And we are live from Rue Boyer,
where we recorded some of the album Hyperdrama, and we're gonna talk about Neverender.
We don't have many rules when it comes to start a track. If it can come from a melodic idea or a sound idea. We discovered this synthesizer when I was doing my solo record. It had such a special quality that we ended up buying one. It's always the sound that kind of dictates the writing in some ways. Depending on the place on the keyboard where it sounds the best, you're gonna find different chords.
Most of the sounds of Hyperdrama comes from this synthesizer. That's the main synth of Neverender. So we wrote 2 chord progressions that are basically the track. And on the first demo, we were trying to make one synth sound like if it was a whole band playing together. Came with the production session. There's a lot of bits and pieces, so every time there's a chord playing, you're gonna have a ghost note of the chord just before or after, or you're gonna have one impact of the chord that's gonna be short, and then you're gonna have the reverb coming back with a so it gives a movement of of a whole band playing together just with one instrument.
Justice is definitely, it's funny you're using haute couture. I'm often using jewelry, it's super precise, unique. That's definitely cutting a diamond.
As soon as we wrote the chords and starting organizing the music, we talked to each other and we say, we need to talk about Kevin. We've been listening to Tame Impala since the late 2000s, and it's been at least 12, 13, 14 years that we're thinking it could be natural to make something with him on the vocals. We have a lot of things in common in terms of sensitivity and taste, even if the outcome is slightly different or very different.
One of the things that really had an effect on me when I saw Justice live for the first time, it was in Spain. One of the things that just really fucking shook me was how simple and how powerful it was. Justice sound to me is just so fucking badass and so hard-hitting and so hard-edged, A lot of the time, obviously, it's got its sensitive moments. And I think we've always had sort of a mutual appreciation of each other's music. So it was nice just to hang out and just to get to know each other properly for the first time. It sort of started from there.
Working with Kevin was really fun and really smooth. Obviously, he's a very talented musician and vocalist, but what we learned working with him is that it's the easiest way to make a collaboration successful is to be in the same room and to rebound on each other's musical proposition.
The vocals are very simple. We recorded them in Conway, Los Angeles. And as soon as we were all together back in the room, and he was in the couch, holding the mic like this, he sounded like an angel. He was singing everything perfectly.
We've always wanted to collaborate with him because we felt that we had some kind of similar emotion in the way we write songs, something very melancholic.
The way those songs made me want to like dance, yet being emotional and like think about my life and everything, and just that feeling of nostalgia. It really defines the beauty of music. There's like this feeling of wanting to let go. Sometimes you listen to it and you kind of digest what's going on in your life.
Naturally, he came back with a great vocal line for Neverender. It was a bit like a match made in heaven, in the sense that it was closer, maybe harmonically, to what he's doing.
First thing I can say about Tame Impala and Justice, they are the kind of artists who were born at the wrong time. They are stuck, in the 70s or 80s, but they have to use modern tools, to produce and create their music. And this, confrontation of, like those two vibes and influences, being, fascinated by I don't know, Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or prog rock, but trying to make music, in 2025, create something unique and kind of magic. You can hear immediately when it's a Tame Impala song and the Justice signature. Again, it's like an instant.
Even if we can play like keyboards and guitars, we would never like start playing these kind of things naturally together, and that's being offered by the world of computers.
The thing is that, especially for this record, we just wanted to blur the lines a bit, that the core of the track would be a bit this kind of chrome magma, like very streamlined and very magical in some ways.
We used Melodyne a lot, so of course it's a tool made to fix vocals, tuning and everything. We used the re-synthesize part of the plugin. And what we loved about it is that it gives like things like a very digital and futuristic texture. And we wanted things to sound a bit unnatural on this record. Or not unnatural, but like supernatural.
When you take music or sound or whatever that you recorded with an instrument, and you start chopping it up and you start doing things to it that the ear knows is not the real thing. When you take vocals and you chop them up, when you take synthesizers or pianos and repitch them and sort of like stitch them together in a way, as you say, that is impossible to play. As listeners, we respond to that in a different way. Like, we can hear that things are like chopping instantly. Because it sounds sort of like unnatural or whatever, it's like exciting. That's like the holy grail, is where you can sort of like find the sweet spot between something that's like real and expressive and then sort of fuck with it in a way that's kind of alien or robot.
Another big part of this is the bottle. Every time you hear live drums on this record, it's Vincent Tegère playing. On the demo, we made this with a triangle. And when we played it to him, we asked him, so, okay, can you play like a triangle part? And he listened to this part and he told us, no, we're gonna make it with a bottle. So he asked for a beer to be served to him, so we gave him a beer, and once he drank it, he played it, so that's this part.
If we only use like the classic stuff in a classic way, it's really hard to break out of sounding retro or sounding old. Like, to sound modern, to sound futuristic, you've got to think outside the box. You've got to try things that aren't allowed, that aren't permitted just by playing it,
Even their approach to sampling and how they incorporated the samples in their production, or chopping, like synths and things like that. Their drum programming, like super in your face, super like tight drums. I mean, they really created their own genre, I think.
It could sound very traditional with the exact same chord progression. Even if we had like just like the drums more natural, the same PPG but played instead of like being sampled and resequenced, and Kevin singing like more naturally on top of it, it would be the exact same song but it wouldn't give the same kind of impression of that thing that's like moving and the sound a bit enveloping you, you know.
I think that stylistically, they've influenced people in hip hop not just because of the music, but also because of the aesthetic. They were able to see that, you know, that you can make distortion sound good, you know, sound nice to people, sound like something that people want to listen to rather than something that hurts their ears.
I don't think there is a Justice recipe in terms of sound, but there is definitely something going with their use of drums. You know, they have the same drum kit on most of the song.
But there's just like so many examples throughout history of just like limitation just being the coolest factor, you know, just being something that makes you think of other things and think of things you wouldn't do. It just creates pathways in the music.
I don't know, there is this, you know, distorted sound, the compression, the loudness, but at the same time, it's very emotional with the Justice chords. So it's a mix of heavy metal vibes and epic sounds, you know, that remind us some iconic, you know, French soundtracks from the 70s. So all of this makes it so special.
The thing that keeps us like spending so much time on the track is the harmonic sensation and the emotion that we still lack.
Yeah, non mais c'est vrai. It's true that, for example, like even if we feel that we are making like very different things, we evolve in a realm that's maybe way more narrow than what we think. But we only made 4 albums so far, so we're still beginners.